Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Joining me today is Sridhar Chityala ji, as always, Sunday evening 7 p.m. We're going to talk about an important evolving news, that is China-United States tariff agreement talks. Let's welcome Sridhar ji. Sridhar ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
And very happy to be here and looking forward to a very good discussion, Sree.
Thank you so much, sir. And we're going to start with breaking news. Scott Bessent, the US Treasury Secretary, has just made a very stunning pronouncement that there is some sort of an agreement in place as far as the rare earth materials are concerned. Remember, I told you, viewers, that close to 920 pounds or 400 kilograms of every F-35 is rare earth. So one F-35 plane takes 400 kilograms or 920 pounds of rare earth metals. So US is desperately in need of rare earth. So this is something that they can really gum up the works. Sridhar ji, what is the latest? Scott has made just a statement in ASEAN. Is this like leading up to the meeting between Xi Jinping and Trump? And then we'll talk about the internal power politics of CCP. Over to you, sir.
Great. I think that Scott Bessent and the Chinese Vice Premier had pretty good discussions over past 2 days in Malaysia, which is where the ASEAN meet is being held. So they have come up with a broad framework that includes a number of things. The most important thing that they have agreed is, differing the what we call export restriction controls we talked about in a couple of programs ago. So that will release a lot of pressure for United States. That part of it, they seem to have come to an agreement. Then they have set out a framework for discussions between President Trump and Xi Jinping on October 30th, that is in Korea, for the APEC meet, where discussions will take place on other topics. So he was asked the question, whether China will be hit with 100% tariffs on November 1st. Today they are at 57.6, so 157.6. The answer was an emphatic no. There will not be 100% additional tariff on China on November 1st. And will that date be paused and date extended for the agreements to evolve, for which again he has stated yes, they will be pausing and the agreements to be reached based on the discussions between Xi Jinping and President Trump. So clearly that is very specific and very clear announcement coming at the conclusion of the 2 days of meetings, laying the framework for both these leaders to meet at the APEC meet.
Thank you so much, sir. Now let's take a look at our slide deck. We have a few slides to share with you viewers. Let's get the slide deck going. Over to you, Sridhar ji.
Right. Okay.
Next
yes,
one,
they are meeting.
Yeah.
The question, are they meeting? Yes, they are meeting, because both parties seem to very keen to come to some form of a conclusion to move this forward. Before I kind of go into the slide, let me also tell you, it's not just the rare earths, and it's not like United States is kind of bending, begging, and howling on top of their voice. China has got a lot of issues as well. Okay, and China needs this deal as much as United States. They have got China. US is one of the biggest partners of China, and they have got excess inventory. They got factories with oversupply, all in anticipation of increased exports to United States. So there's a lot of pressure from within China, which you don't get to hear from the main media, which is also forcing Xi Jinping to not wink and let go of this opportunity. And we will share more about this on Thursday when the details come out and the consequences in the markets. So now let's go to the slide deck.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think one of the questions is the US stalling tariff tax and China amid China's internal struggles. The answer is, both parties want to do a deal, and we'll discuss as to why. I think I've already shared that point. Where is the tariff discussion? Today we touched on this with the lead story, which is namely there appears an imminent deal, and they're all, at least on rare earths. Then there are 4 other topics to be discussed, and there will not be 157.6% tariff on November 1st. That's going to be paused further. what are the Chinese internal struggles which Xi Jinping is dealing with, and he seems more weakened than where he was 12 or 18 months ago. Okay, will Xi and Trump meet later? Based on all the evidence, they are likely to meet on October 30th in Korea. So then what lies on the table, we'll touch on that during that discussions, and what Scott Bessent laid out as a broad framework which sets the rules for these two people to work out a deal and continue to move the trade discussions forward into execution. Next slide.
Before we go to the next slide, viewers, please like this video and also help share this message. Sridharji and I work for 48 hours sometimes to get the slides just right. There's a lot of information. It's an info-packed hangout. You're not going to get this level of depth of engagement with other programs, which is why we always strive to bring you the best. Like, for example, Thursday, Sridharji is getting ready in case some breakthrough happens, so that we have to you the latest on what is happening, because this the US China trade talks are actually the fulcrum around which the entire world revolves. There is clarity needed there. Only then other things are going to start falling in place. So small request to all of you to please like this video. I see a very, very low number in terms of likes. I'd expect that everybody watching is also liking this video. And now let's go back to Sridharji. Sridharji, over to you, sir.
Right. So where's the tariffs right now? You can see the tariffs have moved up from around 18-20% gradually to about, it went up to 20%. Then there was 32.5%. Then there was 57.6%. All the kind of discussions that went on between Trump and Xi, and each person raising the tariff. And I think China has imposed a 38% on US imports or US exports going into China. And United States has 57, and then came with rare earths issue. It went up to 157.6. So this chart basically lays out to you since 2018, what the tariff numbers are. And this is what all the discussions and negotiations are about.
Next one, please, sir.
So where's the tariff discussion today? Average tariffs on Chinese, I think 57.6%. I think we discussed this. US is pushing for a fair outcome, not 100% tariff escalation. The question was asked of President Trump. I think this is why I think China may have read it wrongly, or China is reading it correctly. He was asked, what about Taiwan? He said there are other complex issues to discuss. So right now, Taiwan is not on the table, was President Trump's remark. Okay, so that's one big emotive item which prompted Chinese to respond to say Taiwan is an internal matter, and we will gracefully integrate Taiwan, not through annexation. This is the statement coming from China. So China has also Beijing has also rebutted criticism which says that it has made progress on intellectual property. It has made progress on market reforms. It has also responded with, US has responded with export and investment controls, which is counterproductive for the progress of the discussion. So obviously, the exports as well as the investment export, this is export of those chips, NVIDIA chips, if you recall, and some of the special chips that China uses, which United States was importing and exporting, and US cut that. And then China responded by saying, I no longer want this, I can do it by myself. So this is where, the ding-dong battle between the two nations, and which prompted a lot of people to basically on either side of the fence to tell these two guys, the two leaders of the respective nations, guys, come to discussion and resolve this so we can conduct business. Otherwise, leaving us in limbo, we have no ability to calibrate and manage our business. I think that seems to have accelerated, at least from the US side, a keen interest in internal issues, which we will talk about in a minute within China, is the other factor that is motivating China to move forward. Very noticeable absentee in these discussions. We'll cover that. Chinese Vice Premier himself is, running the negotiations. Next slide.
Sir, before we go to this slide, am I hearing you right that China intends to reform their intellectual property rights? So the last time I have seen, I used to jump up and down with joy in the early 2000s when I got my first patent in China. And then the attorney laughed at me and said, so what? They're not going to give you a dime. They'll just give you an apology. They'll change they'll change the name board and start doing the same thing that they were doing before. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just the previous company will give you a written apology, maybe. That's about it. So it's the intellectual property and, honoring that seems like an oxymoron to me. How do you think China is going to say, sir, this isn't their blood, sir. I'm telling you, nobody can trust China. You just do it transaction-wise because there is no other alternative, and you work feverishly towards getting an alternative. That's the only advice I can give US companies. My 2 cents, sir, over to you.
All right. So, Shriji, you probably hit the nail on the head. One is optics, the second is reality. So what you're hearing is the optics, right? So this is politics, this is press. So what China is saying, hey, US wanted this, and we have already responded by saying we will accede to the IP controls and IP compliance. That's what they say. Okay. Now, whether in detail, whether they follow through, Sree, that's a different story. But in optics, we have done it. So that's the position that they have taken. More we'll get to know as the details progress. The reality may be again completely different, and people may be fighting with each other. So the question, it begs the question whether really in these circumstances, one way is whether people will follow through and conduct a lot of business in China. I mean, that applies to India too, right? So India is saying, bomb with China, but can China be trusted? The answer is, as you correctly said, no. Okay, so I think this slide, a lot of these topics, we what we call front-ended it by saying that the day 2 is also now complete. Day 1 discussions complete. We now have a framework agreement coming together. And 𝗖𝗎 was the person who was 𝗖𝗎 was the person leading Vice Premier, and it's not the wolf warrior, the foreign minister of China, who typically used to lead these types of discussions.
Oh, speaking of wolf warrior,
speaking
of wolf warrior, Qin Gang has made an appearance in Beijing Music Festival a few days ago. He's not eliminated, so he's still there. He's not deleted.
Who is eliminated, who is not eliminated is plenty of kind of rumors. I mean, it's very interesting if you go by Asia, how Nikkei Asia, for example, it keeps putting stories, almost like now Chinese mouthpiece, very similar to South China Post. So you see a lot of stories coming out, which it seems implanted. And it's actually laughable when you read these kinds of stories. And same, about India or about US, about Japan, you have the stories coming, always spinning the Chinese wheel. I mean, it's astonishing, to say the least. Anyway, let's continue, which is to say, right now, where we are after 2 days of discussions, there's a framework, and let's see how these discussions evolve. Next slide. Okay. Chinese internal struggle. So who is leading the discussion? We covered this again. 𝗖𝗎 is covering the discussions, and Xi's grip remains firm even as many purges continue. The army, we covered this as I was discussing with Sree pre-show. We covered this topic as to how Xi, Army was under CCP, how he took control of everything and put his own people. It looked like most of his people have been either, wiped out, or when I say purge, wiped out meaning not, eliminated, but they're all not holding the positions, and several people under several types of investigation, etc. So he seems to have, army appears to have asserted its independence and taken control and directly under the CCP. The question that's also making rounds is, how is Xi Jinping's health? And people have micro-analyzed his video and saying, his left hand is not moving, right hand is not moving. He appears unwell. But having said that, at the SCO meet, he did have meetings with everybody, Modi ji and Vladimir Putin and all other kinds of leaders. Okay, all other kinds of leaders. Okay, so whether he will appear at the APEC summit? Yes, he will appear at the APEC summit. Where is Wolf Warrior Dr. Wang Yi? Where is he? He is hiding. He's not hiding. He is continues to make provocative statements on the unilateral tariffs that Trump has imposed. And actually, Trump and United States are going to be the losers, not China. That seems to be his position. And Xi decided, no, this is not the man I want to be negotiating, because we need a deal. Why does he need a deal? He needs a deal. We'll cover that in the next slide.
Yes, indeed. Before we go, so viewers, as far as we can tell, there are three camps now, very clear. One is Hu Jintao's camp. Hu Jintao controls a lot of the bureaucracy because he's called as the headmaster. He's supposed to have, nurtured many of the people who are now in important bureaucratic positions in China, from mentoring them from their college level and so on. Hu Jintao was the premier before stepping down in favor of Xi Jinping. I told you in a different hangout how that story came about. And so Hu Jintao camp is there. And these are the people who actually execute whatever the government policies agreed to. Then you have Zhang Yujia, who is actually in complete control of the military. Whatever is left appears to be what Xi is controlling. We'll be watching it very carefully. Who is exactly doing what? There is this one fellow called 𝗣𝗙𝗘. He is the one who actually met with Modi in addition to Xi Jinping. And we need to look at what is the importance of 𝗣𝗙𝗘. Maybe you can talk about it, sir. 𝗣𝗙𝗘, who is this guy? What is so important about him?
Well, I think that he's another leader who is they're basically two categories. One dealing with Asia and ASEAN, but there is an issue that is, I'm sure she has covered in the up in the north. They have built missile launchers and capabilities within the Tibetan enclave, which is raising questions about what is it that they are negotiating while having these huge military facilities that has been unlocked, and this is observed through satellites, and the satellite images confirm. So there must be a discussion going on that part of it, which Xi has delegated to this guy, his man, rather than Zhang Yuji. So therefore, that could be that part of the discussions. We'll cover that. We don't want to deviate, but that could be that reason.
Yes, indeed.
And then who are the people? Okay, Li Ruhan, Wen Jiabao, who are, especially Wen Jiabao, has ruled, managed, and these are the people from within CCP who are former leaders who are raising their hand and saying, we are going in the wrong direction. Why we are going the wrong direction? We have excess capacity. We have built factories. The labor are unemployed. We have excess inventory. Chinese economy will kind of collapse. We will do a US-China comparison, just as we did US-India comparison on economic data. So you understand, yes. I mean, it's not all bed of roses for China. China has got lots of problems despite the bravado. They can make people suffer. They can control information. That generally is the kind of tactics that China typically plays out. But nobody wants that. The CCP under Jiang Zemin and Xi Jinping and Wen Jiabao, they have been moving CCP towards economic policy-led opening up of China rather than a military confrontation. So therefore, that's one pressure. They call these people as princelings. Who are the princelings who are based overseas? These are ex-CCP officials, children. These are army officials, children. These are government officials, children. It's a very fragmented group. Well, if they unite, they could be formidable. They're making a lot of pressure from overseas through their hoodwinks in China. It is not yet a cohesive, united group, but there's pressure coming from there. Then military leaders that we covered, like Zhang. Okay, so this is the third front. The fourth front is the middle class and the entrepreneurial class, which have all invested, which are reliant on these large factories are expressing enormous discontent through the CCP leadership down at the state and at various levels, saying that there is discontent and there is problems around the economy and the onward momentum of the economy. So therefore, 57.6% tariff is not a small money, and that is paid by China to United States. At this stage, as at now, there's $600 billion has been collected as tariffs, and the target right now is 2.3 trillion. That's the number that we are talking about, which is officially published by the US, and the money in the account is 600 billion. So he has a backlash over economic policies, and he has to demonstrate to the world, well, he has struck a deal on his terms, is going to give, and as a reciprocal, this is what he has got, and which is very good for Chinese economy. Hence, there is anxiety on the part of Xi. There's anxiety on the part of Trump to do a deal, because if China deal is done, it's a whole economic impetus as far as United States is concerned. There is at least several thousand factories established by US companies in anticipation the goods can flow from them into United States. Remember, those companies, they may be US, but they are domiciled in China. They are considered for all practical purposes, Chinese companies. So you have several avenues of pressure. Both the leaders want to do a deal, while Xi is also facing tremendous internal strife because of his lackluster policies, which is hurting China.
Now, one thing that continues to amaze me, Sridharji, is China's disregard for WTO rules. For example, you and I talked about it pre-show, that they have over-manufactured everything known to mankind. The amount of steel that they have manufactured, if you put it as a length, it is 9 times the distance from Earth to Moon, back and forward, round trip. 9 times the round trip length. That is the amount of steel that they have produced. The world doesn't need that much steel. And this is just one example. BYD cars, they have produced them by the hundreds and thousands, and many of them have defects also. You look at even small things like Bluetooth devices or microphones, all of them, sir, they'll work for 15-20 minutes, then they run out of charge. I mean, if, like, for example, it took me 7 or 8 devices before I got onto this one thing that appears to work for 2 hours or 3 hours. Okay. What my horror was, sir, I would record a monologue. Sridharji, I'm telling you from experience. I would record a monologue. It'll start out fine in the beginning, and I'm just rattling away 15-20 minutes. And then at the end, I stop the recording and then I play it back. The microphone stops recording at midway. I have to do the whole thing again. 20-25 minutes wasted, sir. This is the kind of frustration you have with the Chinese devices. On the other hand, there is no space for any American devices left. There's only one microphone manufacturer called Rode, and they charge at $200. All the Chinese products are between $20 to $30. I mean, this WTO compliance is what they really need to do, Sridharji, in my opinion, because when you have oversupply, you cannot just keep on making it. The total disregard for the rules of the world. And that steel could be repurposed for something else. And these guys have just, they have completely plundered the mines in Australia. There was this joker called Kevin Rudd, who used to be the Prime Minister in China of Australia. They said he's actually Chinese born. Well, that was how much he was, completely under the grip of China.
Compromised. No, it's very true. I'm smiling because you go first BYD cars. Bangalore, I was recently in Bangalore, flooded with BYD cars. Okay.
Yes.
BYD cars. So that's anyway. That's setting that aside. Going back to when we used to live in Australia in late 80s, early 90s, there was this concept called TCF. Textiles, clothing and footwear. Okay, so the story is that the entire DCF was what you call compromised in terms of duties and offloaded to China. A lot of stuff arrived from China. So they used to be in shops called, if you go to there's shops called Reject, where everything you will get for 99 cents and $1.20. Reject. So everything is from China. So there used to be a joke. You can get an umbrella, an Australian-made umbrella for about 14, 15, 20 Australian dollars. You'll get a Chinese-made umbrella for 99 cents. Half of them won't open. Okay, once it is open, when you have a heavy downpour, you find that the umbrellas don't function. So what I'm saying is, forget WTO. Okay, what can WTO do when the internal quality controls within each of the countries certify and bring them on board because of the greed of the traders? Because the traders is nothing but the greed of the traders who are importers. That's why this is coming in. If they put strong quality controls, none of this will make. So this is what China whipped up and built a business ecosystem. So there's no surprise here, Sriji. First, flood the market, kill the competition, and then see whether you can dictate controls. This has been very well articulated and implemented Chinese policy. I don't know whether we covered, but this rare earth strategy, China figured out that rare earths is what they control, and almost from 1990s, they have been accumulating the rare earths. And at the decisive movement, the first term of Trump presidency was unpredictable, but come second term, they are very well prepared in terms of combating United States. The only thing that is hurting them is if US stops and puts controls, it affects their domestic economy because they are so dependent on United States as an importer. That is what is causing this economic hiccup and the problem for Xi Jinping. Otherwise, this man would not have conceded to anything, Sriji. So he's not worried about WTO. He's not worried about WTO. So he's not worried about ICA.
Sridharji, the problem is that you can say, okay, these are America imposed rules, WTO, and so on and so forth. But at least you had some consideration for supply and demand. The world's resources are limited; they are not infinite. And when China just takes it up and just does it whatever it wants to do with it. I mean, Australia's prosperity is all from China because they just kept buying whatever Australia could mine for them. And in turn, they also made sure that the one mine that Gautam Adani tried to create, that was shut down.
Yeah.
Sir, I mean, viewers, you can agree with me or not agree with me, but China is probably one country which has placed maximum obstacles in the way of Adani's growth. I mean, Adani doesn't work on, refineries. He works on infrastructure. Very low margins, but predictable margins, but things have to keep moving. If you take over a port authority, I mean, goods have to go through imports, exports, everything. And they try to gum it up. So China is a sneaky customer. China is a cunning customer. You need to really keep your eyes wide open. When you shake hands, you need to go take your hand back and count all the fingers if they are intact or not. I'm sorry to say all these things because I see some of the comments, Sridharji, on our feed. Arrogance, hubris. And they are starting to use Hindu names now. Very, very smart. You think that we don't understand what you are saying? So there's an interesting thing. 2008 Olympics were happening in Beijing, right? So the average Chinese cannot pronounce the letter L, like in clap, clap. So when they used to want to rouse the crowd in the stadium to clap hands because some Chinese competitor was going to come, the message display boards will say CRAP hands.
Oh my God. Yeah. 2008, we won't go there. I mean, how China orchestrated that 2008. 2004, we were at the Greek Olympics, Athens Olympics. Hardly any turnout. Everybody was in China. I mean, I'm talking about the media industry. everybody was in China preparing for the biggest event. Anyway, that's a separate topic we can discuss one day as to how China orchestrates. But things may be changing, Sriji. Not CCP, but things may be changing as more and more middle class become affluent and more begin to start thinking that things have to change. I hope that there is something in the next 50 years. It's not going to happen in the next 2 years or next 5 years, but over the next 50 years. Okay, so let's go to the next slide in terms of where we are.
I think we are done with the slides, sir. We have some Q&A. I just wanted to relate some of the stories that I have been coming up.
We had no concluding slide. Okay, no problem. All right, we finished.
That was it, I think, because Sachin has taken off the slide deck. So now we have to go for some questions. Another interesting story. You know how this one girl, let's see what he says. Yeah, that was it. Sir, let's go to some questions now. Can we have the questions, please? I want to tell one other interesting story.
One thing before we wrap up this discussion. There are 4 important items that's on the table as far as Trump is concerned. One which everybody is fentanyl. United States is not going to compromise. They're saying that fentanyl is a very big problem and China has to do something about it. That's number one. That's one of the first items. The second item is they are insisting that the soybeans and other agro products, very similar to what United States was telling India, has to be back and that has to resume. So that's the second kind of agenda that they have put on the table. The third that they have put on the table is much broader market access. Okay, market access. And the fourth one is the fair trade, which means that they need to eliminate some of their own kind of discounts that they have, eliminate the tariffs so that there is a fair trade across whole gamut of products, so that the trade can resume. One important omission: Russian oil. You remember how Russian oil has been bet to death between China and US by India? No, the Russian oil is very conspicuous. It was in the discussion, especially to stop the Ukraine war. But for some reasons, they realize that's not going to, 40% import is from Russia. They're not going to bend. Very similar to the way United India has not bent or acceded to it. So that discussion is off the table. But these 4 items in conjunction with rare earths is the broad discussion. So they need to come to an arrangement. So that is what the scope on 30th. We'll report to you what happens. With that, I complete. Sree, over to you.
Thank you so much. So viewers, the game plan of all these middle-level millionaires of China, what they have done is they have managed to discover relatives who will vouch for their relationship with these people, because Xi Jinping imposed the controls of $5,000 per person if you want to take money out of China. So if you want to get 500,000, you have to discover 1,000 relatives. And like this, they have come and bought up property in critical cities in the United States and Canada. What are the critical cities? Toronto, Vancouver. These are the 2 cities in Canada. Then in United States, Boston, which is where many of the universities are. They have also bought up critical real estate in Los Angeles. New York, I'm not 100% sure, but definitely in the Bay Area. Bay Area is full of Chinese-owned properties. Sridharji, if you want to go and get anything rented out today, it's a very well-established process, and you will not be able to get the answer instantly. It will come 24 hours later, because you start pressing. Why the hell does it take 24 hours? Say yes or no. This is what I'm willing to pay. I have other people to take offers from. It says, no. My boss is in China. I have to run it by him. Same story everywhere. People sitting in San Francisco and LA speaking good English, but they don't actually do the decision making. Everything goes back to China. Lastly, you know how there was a story about one 22-year-old girl who got into an accident in Australia. She was driving a Rolls Royce or something like that. And when the press reached her house, they saw a huge mansion and like 8 Rolls Royces lined up there. And she is believed to be the illegitimate child of Xi Jinping. Viewers, we have many such instances, many mistresses, many daughters, princelings, all these people, they have come completely flooded the higher end housing in the Silicon Valley. I mean, there are two bands, if you ask me. 1.5 million is where the low ends now is so expensive. Okay, from 1.5 to 3, there is the middle level houses. Beyond 3 million, that's where these people start playing. They come, they give you cash, and they buy the house. And these are areas in Silicon Valley as well as in LA, completely filled with millionaires, gazillionaires. Sometimes nobody lives there because this is the girlfriend business. Whenever that guy comes, the girlfriend will be there. Otherwise, the house is just locked and kept. So this kind of stuff is going on. In fact, it became such a problem in Vancouver that they said if you are a foreigner trying to buy property, there is an extra overhead you have to pay. On top of that, if you are not occupying the place, there's a non-occupancy tax also that they have started charging. The reason is they say that, look, there is a complex of 100 flats. 3 flats are owned by Chinese and nobody lives there. But to keep the other 97, we have to keep giving water, electricity, heating, everything goes to everybody. You can't turn off for one or the other. So you pay extra. And still it is not deterring them. So sir, there is a big mess coming up. The deals are all like temporary, transient, in my opinion. There's a root problem. In fact, what you're seeing about US acting in Venezuela has roots back to this, because China has tried to take over the Venezuelan oil control.
Yes,
there are offshore platforms in Venezuela which are completely owned, operated by the Chinese. And they say that the whole output from that goes directly to China. Even though we know that 40% of crude of China, requirements of China is coming from Russia, where is the remaining 60% coming from? Qatar, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is taking digital yuan. Iran is taking digital yuan. It's a huge mess that you have to climb out of. And I can tell you, viewers, the Republicans will have to be in power, and patriotic, honest Republicans. I have to say, underline this, for another 4 terms before some sort of a semblance of equivalence can be established. There's so much mess right now. In fact, Sridharji, I'm surprised. Usually your programs are not, shadow banned. Today, there must be a lot of reporting going on because the crowd is not commensurate to what the quality of program we produce and the kind of news we get. A little bit disappointing the way the crowd is today, but we will soldier on, viewers. You need to start or downloading PGurus app. I've been saying this again and again because I'm considering moving some of the more edgy content to our app rather than putting it on YouTube, because I don't know if there is a forcible, somebody gaming the algorithms and forcing the thing to not go viral or not. I don't think it is happening. At the same time, I do get surprised sometimes. Sir, first question, sir. Namaskaram, Sridhar Garu. Will US sanctions on Russian oil affect India economically? Did India and China really reduce Russian oil, or are they procuring from third-party means?
No, I think that the message is the last 2 months, September and October, last 2 months, August and September, I think India increased its oil supplies from Russia to 1.8 million barrels per day. So therefore, it's not that news is not correct. And several of these news that he's promised to cut, he's cutting, and it has cut, etc., is just all what we call as the AI rendered news rather than the reality. Okay, so that's what that's the situation. As far as will US sanctions affect? No, I think that the India and China have calibrated this game. We covered last weekend. If you miss, you see the program. Indian economy is soldiering on. It's not showing any signs of waning down. India is the shining star. China is weathering, but China has more structural problems in terms of what they have done to their own economy.
Next one, please. Pawan Kishore wants to know, how long will shutdown last? Any seeming bipartisan agreement in the horizon? Going forward, what other services will get impacted if the impasse continues?
Well, I think that there is no bipartisan agreement. There is not even close proximity to bipartisan agreement because both the parties are completely on the opposite side. And what is going to happen? Trump and Republicans are going to use this to go on weaning away the issues and the costs that the US government is dealing with. So therefore, it'll go on. How long it'll go on, we don't know until there is a court intervention. But right now, both sides are nowhere close to the agreement in terms of compromise. So that's where we are.
Naresh wants to know, every day you get a copy by the evening in the neighboring shops in China. Does IPR make any sense for China? Almost every car product chip and features get copied in hours. Your views?
I think we discussed this at length. One is the DNA and second is the compliance to the rules. Both don't exist. If that is the case, then it's impossible to construct contracts and documents. But unless people change, this is not going to change either.
Sridharji, I'm also hearing another interesting story that so far the sources or the countries through which China used to route its products, they were identified as 3 or 4. Vietnam, Cambodia, Mexico, and to a little bit Canada. Now I'm hearing Morocco is starting to do the same thing. I mean, it's like whack-a-mole, sir. You remember that whack-a-mole that we used to play when you would take our children to the malls and the thing will just keep popping and you have a hammer, tuck, 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 you just keep whacking it. That's exactly what it is.
Well, I think that China has read this game. China has practiced this game. And, it's an attitude and it is a push by the centrally controlled CCP. Reform, there is no reforms. Anybody who has attempted to reform, remember Li Keqiang, what happened to him?
Yes.
Okay. Any reform is dealt at, hopefully the rebellion that is slowly creeping up, will change course and more economic policy driven changes will occur in China, which is good for China and the Chinese and good for the world.
Next one, please. 3 years ago, there was a story in LA finishing up this thing about extraordinarily rich people doing extraordinarily menial tasks. 23-year-old girl goes to Brentwood Mansions, Bel Air Estates and other places. She'll teach piano lessons. Comes in a very high-end car. But piano lessons give you $20-25 an hour or maybe $30. Even if they're high polloi, they might be paying you $40 an hour. But this person was incredibly rich. And then the people are saying, look, when we went and look at her house, it's a huge mansion.
Yeah.
Where did she get all the money from? 20s. So viewers, there's a lot going on than meets the eye. And how it is going to unwind itself is something that has to be seen. I have been to Chinatown. I have told you about this in San Francisco. All you see there are red China flags. There'll be, for 100 red China flags, there'll be 1 Taiwanese flag. It used to be like a fairly healthy sprinkling of both some time ago. And it's a shocker now how these things are being taken over. Anyway, interesting times ahead. Even whether deal or no deal, I'm holding my breath. There's a big cleanup that needs to happen. Sir, next question. Milpan Cherian wants to know, if China and US do a deal, will China be forced to be not crooked with the US anymore?
No, I think that both of them will continue to follow their respective policies. The trade agreement does only 2 things. It streamlines the current business ecosystem to predictably follow and conduct their business. That's number one, which is what they're waiting for. Second, there is markets, which is to say, okay, companies and industries can now draw profits or losses based on the trade deal that is agreed to. So people will begin to focus on economy while continuing to do their respective dirty tricks around the world. This trade deal is not going to stop any of those things. They continue. It's purely a matter of business activity reset. Nothing more, nothing less.
Next one, please. Ganesh wants to know, does it look like USA is more inclined to make trade deals with both China and India than earlier, appearing like that Russia will get cornered with sanctions, and will it impact oil?
I think that there is a lot of pressure from business groups who are in respective countries and in US to conduct, because India is now hosting several US companies. There's a lot of activity. For example, Alphabet just invested $15 billion in India. And similarly, there are major investments planned by Microsoft and other people. So there is a business imperative which is going to force United States to complete deals with both. There's also defense partnerships to manufacture some of the equipment in India. So therefore, similar in China. So I think not defense equipment, but more retail goods. The story is that there is intent on the business side to complete the deals. The strategic issues will continue to remain on the geopolitics. That is not going to kind of go away. That's number two. Number three, you asked the question. No, I think we have gone past this oil issue. And now all the countries know how to transact with each other. India knows it can get Venezuela oil, it can get alternative oil, it can continue to get Russian oil. So, therefore, that the oil issue is now seems to be, tethering out, and it will. I think that's why it is getting off the table. What's oil trading at? $59 to $65. That is pretty low. We're not too far from $55. So the story is that this oil equation, which was flagged to death by the United States, thinking that's what is the cause, and funding of the Russia has got huge. Russia has got $600 billion of reserves. It's another communist nation. So it knows how to draw its resources and how to make things work. It has got two biggest consumers of energy, China and China and India, in its ledger, and it also has strategic discussions with these two countries on an ongoing basis. So United States is not going to be able to force Russia to bend and concede and have economic peril in its shores.
Next one, please. Vishal Singh wants to know, why is China overproducing? Please enlighten us of all possibilities.
To kill alternative markets, to kill any alternative markets, number one. Number two, effectively, it wants to control the markets to which it supplies. You want examples? Rare earths is one of them. Automobiles is one of them. EV vehicles is one of them. So like that, it has shed, retail low-end goods. It has shifted its focus to high-end. It says it is now capable of producing quantum chips. It is now shifting its focus and control of access to both raw materials and the products, as Sree pointed out, citing his example of this recorder, which runs out. But if you want to buy an alternative, it is probably 15 times the price of what he bought. So your temptation is to buy. So they want to flood the markets, and dumping of the goods at the peril of the local industry.
Absolutely, sir. And thanks for a wonderful session today. Viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. One small request to all of you, share these links. Sridhar ji has done extraordinary amount of work. He prepares for it almost for a week, trying to get all the right data in, because we are giving you the thing in a capsulated form. So you get to know the breadth of what is going on. And we'll be back most likely on Thursday if there is any breaking news from the Seoul conference of Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. China's tail cannot be straightened out. It's going to be, the only way I see it is to break it up into smaller parts so that the smaller parts are manageable a little bit more. They can also return to democracy whenever that happens. Maybe not in my lifetime, but it might happen also. You never know. These things start slowly and then suddenly the momentum picks up. We have to wait and see. And see, it's not like democracy is a great system. It is the least flawed among all flawed systems, is how I see it. You can see how George Soros has completely taken over the judiciary in United States, planting his people in just about every attorney general office of substance. They're all handpicked from George Soros. And look at how EU has nominated all their leaders. Ursula von der Leyen, I mean, she would not even win class monitor election. Everything just on from top. There's this other firebrand lady, Kaja Kallas or something like that. She used to be Prime Minister of Estonia. You will find everything one common thing. They'll be all good looking and they'll be young. In fact, the pet name given to Emmanuel Macron is Petit Napoleon. Did you know that?
Oh my God. Amazing.
So
A
lot of things are happening.
They are plumbing, Europe more and more into abyss. Very sad. Very sad.
Yes. So I'm covering more and more Europe, its problems, what are the structural deficiencies that Europe has, and do look into that, because we are introducing new names. Like, for example, Sridharji mentioned about carry trade. I have done an episode on carry trade. What exactly is carry trade? And also, next one we are going to use is a word called strip mining. Strip mining. It's got nothing to do with striptease. There's nothing to do with clothes. It's a different concept. Do watch those episodes. Why you need to know all these things these are the big things that have been in play for 15-20 years that need to be corrected. If you don't do that, then you will continue to have this outrageous size of stock market where 7 stocks are getting much of the investment. The rest are just being thrown by the side. And they need good money. I mean, if you want US to come back as a manufacturing power, the bread and butter, the brick and mortar companies need to get funding too. Why is it that only the Max 7 is getting funding? And why, by the way, they are still laying off people? Why? I mean, they are flush with cash. Why are they laying off people? So there is something that is going on beyond my comprehension. And we are going to look at all these things. What exactly is going on with the US economy? So do look for those strip mining topics. Again, it takes a lot of time to put together the research. Do watch that one. And as always, a pleasure having you, Sridharji. We'll be seeing you again very soon, probably as early as Thursday. Thank you so much, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar, and have a great evening or a great day.